Okay, we are now live. So welcome everyone to the reappraisal town hall that we're doing with the Buncombe County Tax Office. We're going to get all of your questions answered about the reappraisal process. And I just have a few introductory comments that I want to make before we start. One, we're going to be doing two of these. So if you missed this one and want to participate in the next one, it will take place on Monday, August 24th at 4 p.m. If you'd like to participate in the Zoom call, there is a Zoom call taking place that's being streamed to social media. You can join the Zoom call with the information in our events under Facebook. And if you want to ask questions directly, you can email them to realestate.questions@buncombecounty.org. And please chime in because this is a community conversation. If you're a Spanish-speaking audience member, you can, if you're in Zoom, you can click on the globe at the bottom and go and listen to the Spanish interpretation that's also live. Or if you're watching this on Facebook, you can visit Health and Human Services page to listen to it in Spanish. And finally, we have a lot of questions to get through and only an hour to do so. So I'm going to be monitoring Facebook and the Zoom for all comments that we receive and questions we receive. We may not get to all of them, but we will make sure that they are answered in English and Spanish in a Q&A after the fact. So we're going to start by welcoming Keith Miller and Jeff Candler with our tax office. If you guys don't mind to introduce yourself to everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Max. I'm Keith Miller, and Buncombe County Tax Assessor.
I am Jeff Candler, Chief Appraiser, Buncombe County Assessor's Office.
Okay. And what does the assessor do, Keith?
The assessor is responsible for the listing and assessment of all taxable property in the county. And when I say taxable property, we can expand upon that a little bit. That's not only real estate. Sometimes when I say that, people think I only mean real estate, and that's not true. Any taxable property would be real estate, improvements to that real estate of any kind, or motor vehicles, campers, motorhomes, boats, utility trailers, any kind of assets that are taxable in the state of North Carolina.
Okay. So first things first, we're going to start off with, since this is a session about the reappraisal, what is the reappraisal?
The reappraisal is a function in which is set forth in the North Carolina General Statute that all counties in the state of North Carolina must complete. And what the reappraisal is the reevaluation of all real estate, only real estate. Now we're talking about not other personal property. We're only talking about real estate. And that is to put a new market value on all real estate in the county as of a certain date. And that's January 1 of any reappraisal year would be the appraisal date. So whatever we determine the market value to be, that is the reappraisal as of January 1. And the reappraisal is really just determining market value of your property, because the statute says that we function in the state of North Carolina on what we call an ad valorem tax system. And what that means is ad valorem is as to value. So you pay tax on your property according to the value And that's our job then, is to assign a market value to every property in Buncombe County.
And how often do we go through a reappraisal?
The statute requires the assessor to do it a minimum of every 8 years. Buncombe County has been on a 4-year cycle for many years. The Board of Commissioners have the option at any time to advance that reappraisal to a shorter term, such as 4 years. 4 years does work better when you're in a real estate market that has a lot of appreciation. It does keep up with the market a little faster. Plus, there's also places in the statute that are triggers in between the 8-year cycle. If a sales ratio drops below a certain percent, then it automatically triggers a reappraisal. So there's a few different ways that it can happen and reasons that it happens.
So outside of these triggers, they pretty much will always happen on a 4-year cycle from now.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what Buncombe County's been on, and that's what, as long as the market stays the way it is, I would not foresee us recommending to do anything different. But 8 years is the requirement by the statute, but Buncombe County, I would foresee staying on a 4-year cycle.
So when you say property, as you mentioned before, you're talking about not just houses, you're talking about businesses, land. Like, what are you talking about by what you mean on the reappraisal properties?
Well, reappraisal now is only real estate, okay? Only land and improvements to that land. So if you own a piece of land, we're going to value that. If it's vacant, we value it. If it has a building on it, a house, a warehouse, a commercial building, whatever it might be, that's what we're going to revalue doing a reappraisal. Not personal property, not business value, not business assets. Business assets and personal property are valued each year, okay? Not in a reappraisal cycle. Only applies to real estate.
Real estate. Okay. So first of all, what is our tax rate right now?
52.9 cents. So that's 52.9 cents. That's per 100. So if you want to calculate your tax bill, you can take your value, divide it by 100, multiply it times 0.529, and that'll give you an estimate of what your county taxes would be. Now that does not include your fire district, or if you're in a municipality, that's only county. So 52.9 cents.
And how does this value go up and down?
The tax rate?
Yes.
The tax rate is set by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
So once the Board of Commissioners each year, that rate can change each year. And that rate is really looks at what the budget is. When the commissioners decide how much money, how much revenue they need each year to cover the budget, then they convert that into a rate based on what the total taxable value for the county is. And that is determined each year based upon what the budget.
Okay. I'm going to ask you the most common question that you probably get, and then I work in the communications department for the county for you, is, how is my property value determined?
Property values are determined by what other properties like yours are selling for. So the best way to know what your property is worth is to look in the neighborhood or the surrounding neighborhoods that you live near and determine what those homes are selling for. A home that is comparable to yours, and that's going to give you a good idea of what the value of yours should be. Now, in simple forms, that's what we do for every parcel in this county. Now, we do what's called mass appraisal, so we do it on a bigger scale, and we do it using a lot of statistics and a lot of computer programs that helps us do it. But that is the simplicity of it, is that if you own a 1,000 square foot house on a half-acre lot, and you go down the street and someone else owns 1,000, 1,200 square foot house on an acre lot, and whatever that house sold for, if it's comparable to yours, then that's a good indicator of what your home should be worth. So really, reappraisal and what we do every day is interpreting the market. We interpret the market and then apply it to other parcels of like kind. So it's really just that simple. It's a lot to do, and there's a lot of parcels in the county for us to apply that to, but if you're curious about what your home should be worth or what your property should be worth, that's the way to do it.
So this isn't like I can go out and get an appraisal on my house to get to sell it, or this isn't like a Zillow Zestimate or something. This is something that you determine based on your own factors.
We determine it based on our own factors. Now, it is based on appraisable principles and theory. So if you've had a recent appraisal on your home, then it's basically the same thing that we do. We just don't do it on a per parcel. We can't do an individual appraisal on every house in the county. We do a mass appraisal, which means we value groups of like homes, but it's basically the same concept. Now, Zillow's a little different. I mean, you can look at Zillow. The good thing for Zillow, it will tell you what other things around you have sold and what they're selling for. But they use different algorithms to determine what that value is and apply it to your home. So, you know, sometimes it'll be close and sometimes it won't. So, you know, I just caution you to, you know, be careful about that. Although Zillow is a good avenue to look up data and things that have sold around you.
So you said it's groups that you group these properties together. Are these groups based off of square footage, number of bedrooms, the property amount?
It can be all of the above. So what's the simplest group is to look at a subdivision. If you have a home inside a well-defined subdivision, and all these homes are comparable in quality, year built, and in a similar range of square feet, those are the group of property that we'll value together. Then if we go beyond that, which is not in a subdivision, then we will go out a little further to look for different homes and put them together in groups based on square footage, year built, quality, a lot of different things that we look at.
So if you get your appraisal, you get it in the mail, I take it? When you get your appraisal?
Yes.
You get it as a letter from the tax office.
We will mail you a notice of value for the reappraisal sometime around the 1st of February, telling you what that value will be starting January 1.
So what happens if you disagree with your appraisal value? What steps are available for you?
There is an appeal process that's in place. So if you get that value and you look at it and say, whoa, something's wrong because there's no way my house could be valued at that, then the first thing I suggest you to do is do what we just spoke about. Go back first, look in your neighborhood, look at homes that have sold, look at homes that's for sale also, and see what those values are, and then look at your value and see how it compares. If you then think that something is wrong with your value and we need to take another look at it, then you can appeal that. Now, a couple ways to do that. Online, we have online appeals now. You can go to the Buncombe County website. You can fill out all your information, submit it there online, submit the information with it that you gathered, because the one thing the appraiser is going to ask you in that appeal process is that, how did you determine, you as the property owner, how did you determine what your value should be versus what we have on it? So otherwise, you're probably not going to be very successful in the appeal process if you just submit the appeal and don't submit anything with it. The other way is that you can call this office and we will mail you an appeal form. You can fill out the form, provide the information, mail it back to us, email it back to us. We try to make it the most convenient for you as possible. So we're happy to work through any of that process with any citizen that has a question about that value, because we want you to be comfortable with it. You know, the other thing that can affect that is that I encourage everybody to go to our website and look at your property. Look at the square footage. Look at, you know, the things that we have listed on your home to make sure it's listed correctly. That's where we will start first with any appellant, is to make sure that we have the right data.
So what would you say if someone wanted to appeal? What would be some tax office recommendations that you could give them to better prepare? Because you said that you're going to ask them, how did you come across what this number is? Like, how do they come across what this number is? What are some things they can do to prepare for an appeal?
Yeah, and the good thing is that we offer the citizen some tools there. So you can go to our website and we're going to have a tool available for you that's called Comper, or you will see we have a new tool now called PRC. And the citizen can go to that site now and type in their address, and it'll pull up their property, and you can quickly be able to see at least 3 comparables for your home. And Max, we have that available if you'd like to if we'd like to show that real quick to those people that are watching.
What a great segue for Jeff to start showing.
Yeah, Jeff, if you you want to share that with us and show us how easy that is for a citizen to be able to look at that.
Right. I'll show you the PRC. We don't have the comp quite ready to share just yet. Can everyone see the Buncombe County Assessment Property Search page?
Yes.
Okay, so I've previously selected a parcel. When you get to this point, you can see the actual photo of the house. You can pan over and see the sketch layout that we have for the property. You can see the aerial photograph of the property. And as you scroll down, you can start seeing some more key detail. The assessment detail shows the breakdown between the land value and the building value. And they'll give you the total taxable value from that. And one thing I'll point out that Keith mentioned already, but it is a question that we get a lot. We do assess at 100% market value as of that appraisal date. I know some states, some areas do a percentage, some as low as 50%, but we are 100% market value. As you scroll down, you can see more detailed information about the house itself or the improvements on the property. You can see the number of bathrooms, bedrooms, fireplaces, any of the detail that goes in that helps us value this property. All this information is here. One good thing for the citizen we have is if you see a problem with any of this information, you can click here and it will pull up a page where you can report any misinformation that we may have. That will come back to us, and one of our staff appraisers will review this information. If it's something as simple as adjusting number of bedrooms or bathrooms, a lot of the times we can do that on the fly. If it's more detailed information, maybe incorrect square footage, we may actually set a site visit to come out and take a look at it and verify any of that information. Also, I'll point out a couple of things here. We do have hyperlinks that will take you straight to the Register of Deeds. So you can click on this deed booking page that will take you to the Register of Deeds office, and you can actually look at the deed. And there's also a hyperlink for the plat as well.
So 2 quick questions for you. One, where can people access this? They can go to buncombecounty.org/tax, and it's easy to find. It's available now.
This is available. You can go to buncombecounty.org, follow the prompts to the tax office, real property, and then just click on the property lookup, and that will take you to this point.
And the other question is you mentioned we value at 100% market value. Some people value at 50% market value. I kind of don't know what that means. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. In some states that do a partial assessment, they will do a complete appraisal, and then they'll back off a certain percentage, and that's what you're taxed on. North Carolina, we do assess at 100% market value. That is what from the data that we've collected and the everything that we've studied, this is what this property should sell for between a willing buyer and seller as of that date.
And you recommend people go to this website before the appeal and to make sure that their information's correct. How will the information on this site assist?
So I do recommend that the citizen go here. It's as property owners, we all need to be aware of what we're paying, why we're paying what we're paying, and to make sure that the data that we have is listed correctly. We go to great lengths to list property correctly. Everything from, we get building permits, we have access to MLS data, but sometimes it's not uncommon to have a property not listed 100% correctly. But this gives the citizen an opportunity to point out this any inaccuracies to us so we can get those corrected. And it'd be great to get those corrected before we send the notices out in January.
Great. So when it comes to the reappraisal process, like what is the tax office actually involved in? Do you send people out to look at properties? Do you interview people? Or is it completely based solely on the property information that people can look up in this software?
So we have a lot of steps that we take. We have a certain amount of what we call maintenance work that we do each year. And we'll look at anywhere from 20 to 25,000 properties per year, whether that be due to property transfers, land splits, land combinations, building permits, that sort of thing. So in a normal year, we're already looking at a lot of properties leading up to the reappraisal itself. We did a voluntary study with the Department of Revenue a couple of years ago, where we did a random selection of a 10% of our overall parcel count, and we had staff in the field verifying these properties, checking the accuracy of these properties, and then we'll do what we call a desktop review. We have a lot of tools as far as aerial imagery. We have pictometry, which is an oblique aerial imagery. Again, we have access to MLS data. So we have a lot of different tools that we use to touch as many properties as we can.
And you mentioned the Comper earlier, which is another piece of another tool the citizens can use online. It's not available yet, you said, but what are some of the things that you hope that they can do by using this Comper?
So to me, Comper will be one of the best tools available to the citizen. So you'll be able to put in your parcel number or your address. It will pull up your property, and it will automatically start searching for comparable properties in your area that have sold within the last time frame. So you can actually look at these properties, compare your property to these properties, see what they've sold for, and then if you do see a problem, say, hey, you've assessed me for $400,000, and there's comps here showing that I'm probably closer in the 380 range. At that point, you can select the comps that you want to show to us, submit that with your appeal form, and one of our staff members can quickly review that property for you.
Great. So is there anything else that you wanted to show regarding the tool?
As far as the PRC part, everything is pretty much here. You can see recent permit activity, value change history. When you can come up to, once the appeal process is open, you'll be able to click on the appeal tab, and that will take you to the page where you can actually submit an online appeal. GIS information is available. It will pull up the GIS parcel, and you can zoom in, zoom out. There's several layers you can turn on, turn off. I recommend, it's pretty self-explanatory. Get in, start playing with it, and you'll see how good of a product this really is.
Great. Well, thanks for walking us through it, Jeff. We'll close it out now. I encourage everyone to visit buncombecounty.org, visit the tax office's page, and check out the CPRC. That stands for Property
Record Card.
Property Record Card. So we kind of went into the what is the reappraisal process, but now we're going to go into more information about hows, like exemptions that exist. So your property tax isn't necessarily the tax that you owe on it. There are exemptions to it. So can you talk about some of those exemptions, Keith?
Sure. Probably the biggest one that we manage is what we define as the elderly exemption, 65 years or older with an income not exceeding $31,000 in the year 2020, and that income does adjust every year based on Social Security increases and stuff like that. But there's the elderly, there's disabled. So if you're 100% disabled and still meet the income qualifications, then you can apply. There's veterans, and there's also, if you own a farm, there's present use value program. So those are probably the biggest ones that we deal with, which will help people reduce what the tax amount is. So now don't do anything to your value on your property, but it does help reduce how much taxes that you will pay.
And there's a list of all of these exemptions on our website.
Yep. If you go to our website, and you will see on that page, you will find tax exemptions. You click on that, it'll go through the whole list with you, and you can determine if there's something you may qualify for.
So if you think you qualify, how do you take advantage of it?
If you think you qualify, you can call this office. We will also consult with you some, talk to you about what it is you're questioning. Do you qualify? We can send you an application, or you can pick up an application here, fill out the application, send it to us. One of our staff will review it, and then you'll be notified if you actually did qualify for that or not. But a lot of people kind of go through the process first on the website to read kind of what the qualifications are, just to make sure before you go through the process that you do feel you qualify.
Okay. So what is a homestead extension?
Well, and this, people sometimes get homestead a little bit confused with the elderly exemption. Okay, some people use that word kind of interchangeably. It's actually what we call the elderly exemption, not homestead. Homestead is a word which was carried over from other states. For example, the state of Florida has an exemption called a homestead exemption, which if you're a resident, you get, but that's not true in North Carolina. So that word homestead is the interchangeable sort of with the elderly exemption.
Okay. So can you retroactively get an exemption? Like if you've already paid your taxes and realize, well, I was exempt last year, or is it only for the following year?
No, you cannot. It is not retroactive. So the filing period for any exemption begins on January 1 of each year through January 31, except for the elderly goes through June 1. So you can apply during that period. Now, if there is good cause, you can also ask for a late application for an elderly. For some reason, maybe you were in a hospital or you were in a nursing facility and you were not able to apply during that time. The statute does give us the ability to accept late applications for what is determined as good cause. But a good rule of thumb, January 1 through January 31 is the listing period each year to file for an exemption.
So you mentioned some of the things that you can get exemptions for. There's age, there's disability, and you said it's based on income. What are some of the other factors that go into whether or not somebody gets an exemption?
Well, for the elderly exemption, there's really, it must be 65 years or older, and you cannot have an income exceeding $31,000 a year for the year 2020. Okay. Veterans. So if you are service connected, 100% disabled, then you can apply. That's possibly a $45,000 exemption off of your assessment, your value. So there's very few determining things there. Disability, if you're not a veteran, you can apply under disability. If you're 100% disabled, you do not have to be 65 years old. You just have to be 100% disabled and still meet the income qualifications.
So are exemptions based on the percentage of value, or is it just a solid number, like you said, 45,000?
The greater of, okay, so if you're looking for an elderly, the greater of 25,000 or 50% of the value is what we take. So in some cases, it's a great exemption for those folks who can qualify. And we encourage you, if you think you qualify, to please let us know. File the application or call here and discuss it with us. And if you qualify, then we want to get you approved for that program.
Great. So one of the questions that we had was, is it true that if someone is 65 and has a disability, they won't have to pay taxes? That's not necessarily true.
That is not necessarily true. Okay. It does not give you a 100% exemption. Okay. It is the greater of 25,000 in value or 50% of the value, whichever is greater. That's what you will get. So you will, in most cases, unless you're living in a property that is valued less than 25,000, then you will have a property tax bill.
Okay. So we kind of touched on this in the beginning, but one of the questions we were going to talk about is what makes property value change? Is it just merely the housing market going up and down? what are some of the big factors there that cause such, because we can have a big change depending on the housing market in a 4-year period.
Yeah, correct. So the appreciation in the market and the housing market is what's going to make the largest change. So as property owners, it's important that you pay attention to what's going on in the market and listen to what's being sold and listen to the reports from your realtors to find out what that appreciation is, because there's a lot of cases in which you may have purchased a property 10 years ago for $100,000, and 10 years later it may be worth $250,000. So it's just a matter of what the appreciation in the market is, and this is buyers and sellers, purely buyers and sellers. It is not the tax office determining that value. Whatever buyers and sellers are changing property for, that's what the market value is, and that does change over time. And you know, some of it is inflation related to cost, but some of it is purely that the fact that this is what somebody's willing to pay you to have the property in which you currently own.
What about household improvements?
Well, household improvements, that can also be a value change. So if you own a house and let's say you added on an addition, or you added on a garage, or you added on a deck, then that can also increase your value. So, and that will be on a yearly basis, okay? So we revalue those improvements on a yearly basis rather than the reappraisal. So if you're building a new house, that's the same thing, is that we will add that value for the year in which it becomes taxable. We do not wait until the reappraisal year to add that.
So every year, when you pay your taxes or before you pay your taxes, you're given the option to for a revaluation for like what adjustments have you made to your home? What are some of the things that add to this revaluation in terms of improvements that the people need to let the tax office know about?
Yeah. So and most owners don't know that it is your responsibility as the property owner to notify us of changes to your property. So if you've made a change as far as an addition, a deck, added a garage, finished a basement, added a swimming pool, added a utility building, any of these type things that you have made changes to, it is every owner's responsibility to notify us beginning during the listing period, January 1 through January 31, to make sure this office is aware of that. Now, we also review all the building permits. We get building permits from the county and the municipalities to try and stay atop of what's going on as far as changes. And we do that as a service to the citizen, because of what I just said, a lot of citizens do not know they need to report that. So we watch the building permits. So if you took out a building permit to add a garage onto your house, typically we will know that. But what I would encourage you to do is that you can call our office and make sure that we are aware of it. Because failure to list those improvements can mean that you would have some penalties in the future for not doing that.
And speaking of penalties, is there, through the reappraisal process or the yearly tax process, is there going to be a change as a result of COVID in terms of due dates for anything, or when people should be more aware of things?
The only change that has been made, and these changes would have to be legislative changes. Buncombe County on their own don't have the ability to change the law of the state of North Carolina, and that would be the tax law. So those changes have to come from the legislative side. The only change that has been made related to COVID that we are aware of at this point is that there was an extension in motor vehicle registrations, which means that then you got some extension on paying your motor vehicle tax when you renewed your motor vehicle license tag. But as far as, is there going to be an extension as far as when your property taxes are due and when they're payable without penalties? No, I would not foresee that to happen.
Okay. So one of the questions that we got in was, when do we anticipate this Comper tool? I'm going back a few steps. When do we anticipate this going live?
We hope to have that live within the next couple of months. Actually, probably maybe within the next 30 days. And that way it gives citizens a little bit of time that you can get in there, look at it, learn how to use it, and be prepared then for when you get ready to appeal your value that you know how to use it. So we will get that out as soon as we have it live. We will make sure that we blast that on Facebook and all the places in which citizens may be connected, so we can let you know that that is available.
I'm promoting a lot of online tool usage as a result of COVID, because we're trying to socially distant. Is the appraisal office open for walk-ins, or do you have meetings through online means, through Zoom, for example, that you can set up with people?
Yeah, we are available to do what is convenient for the citizen. So if that citizen does not have the ability to get on electronically or do a virtual meeting with us, then we welcome you to our office. We would rather schedule an appointment with you, but you are welcome to walk in. You walk in, we will help you. But if you can make in the appointment, or if you have the ability to do a Zoom meeting or do it virtually, then we can schedule that with you much easier. But we are available, even if it's just a phone call. If you want to make a phone call and discuss it with us in that way, then we're happy to do that too. We're doing everything we can to keep our employees safe during COVID and keep our citizens safe also. So if we can work that out to be the best for everybody, then I would encourage that.
Great. Yeah, and we're also going to be creating tools for the community. We're going to be creating some videos in my department, which is not tax, to help people through the PRC and when the comper becomes available as a walkthrough video.
Right.
There are plenty of resources online at the tax office.
We make a lot of resources available, and even if you get an application or if you get an appeal form or our online services as far as Comper or PRC or any of these things, what we have tried to do is make video tutorials to where that the citizen can go to our website, view the tutorial, and you should know exactly how to do that then once you see that tutorial. And if there's one out there that we have not done that citizens are struggling with to know how to do, then I would encourage some feedback from the citizens to let me know that, and we will get that out there and whichever it is to help you through this process.
Great. So those were all of the questions we had prepared. So now we're going to get into some of the questions that we've been getting from people watching on Facebook and people in the Zoom meeting.
Great.
Some of them have already been addressed. But one of them is, historically, in my experience, properties have sold for more than the tax appraisal value. Has the tax office always assessed tax property on market value? We kind of touched on that earlier, but is there more information you could give on that?
Okay, so one thing I asked the person to remember is that a property can sell in between a reappraisal year, and the value can be quite different. Because what you got to remember is that the value that the property assessor has on your property was for one point in time, and that is January 1 for the reevaluation year. So currently, let's take an example right now. January 1, 2017 was the last reappraisal. So that's the value, that's the market value I currently would have on a piece of property. If that property sells today, that sale is relative to what the market value is today, not January 1, 2017. So as we get further away from the last reappraisal date, then you start seeing the appreciation in value, and those values do start being further and further apart. Even during the reappraisal year, there's some things that we don't know about property. Now, again, remember I said earlier, we do mass appraisal, so we value groups of property. We will be probably under some market values on them, what you think market value may be, or a little under what that sales price may have been. And then we'll even be a little maybe over some of the sales prices may have been. But that's mass appraisal, and that's what we do. But let me go back to what I first said. Remember, if you're looking at the value today, what you paid for a property, and what the assessment is today, you got to remember that you paid market value today. The assessment is market value as of January 1, 2017, the last reappraisal.
And going along to your sentence about that you do mass appraisal, there's a lot of equity in that. Can you go into the equity of your appraisal process?
Yeah, so and most people, thanks for bringing that up, because reappraisal is really about equity and about uniformity and about fairness. When our legislators wrote this tax law many, many years ago, it was about uniformity, and reappraisal is in there in order to make sure that no property owner pays more than their fair share. So as we just said, as we go further along in a reappraisal, in between reappraisals, then values start getting out of line and they're no longer in balance. So one neighborhood maybe have more appreciation than the other neighborhood. So that means that someone may be paying more property tax based on your value than someone else. So that's what reappraisal brings back to it, is the uniformity and the equity for all property owners in paying your taxes. So it's really a good process. And I say that, and people say, well, how is that? But I'm saying that because what reappraisal does for every property owner is assures you as the property owner that you are only paying your fair share compared to other people across the county.
So if your property value goes down, you shouldn't have to pay more just because of that's what the value is now. But if your property value goes up, it's because your property value is worth more, so you should have to pay more.
That's correct. Well, and a lot of people don't also, I'll remind people of this, is that during a reappraisal year, just because your value went up does not mean your taxes will go up, okay? There's a lot of people during reappraisal that their value may go down, some will go up. So we also do that equalization in value, and then it's up to your board of commissioners to set the tax rate on whatever that might be. So don't let reappraisal scare you, okay? Because reappraisal is not meant to be to generate more tax. It's meant to make values uniform across the county to be fair with everybody. So, but I know that when most people hear about reappraisal, the first thing they think about is, oh no, my taxes are going to go up. That's not always true. There's a lot of situations where your taxes could even come down.
Even if their value goes up.
Even if your values goes up, because it's dependent upon what happens with the rate. So if the values go up and the commissioners keep the rates low and they don't need more revenue for the budget, then there's a good chance in which your tax bill would not go up. So I caution you that, again, that don't let reappraisal scare you as far as I'm going to have to pay more, because that is not always true that you will have to pay more.
So a question that we've been getting is the reappraisal is definitely happening like next year, correct?
Yes. As of this moment, reappraisal is happening. Every property owner in this county come around the 1st of February of 2021 should receive a notice in the mail telling you what your new value will be for the year 2021. Yes.
Because the Board of Commissioners have mandated the 4-year schedule.
Yes. In 2019, the commissioners approved for the reappraisal of 2021. So we have been working on that. We are going through the process now of approving the schedule of values, which is related to also reappraisal, and we'll be done with that here within the next 30 days, and then we'll move on. So at this point, I see no reason why that the reappraisal would not happen.
Okay. So I have a question about permitting. That's not necessarily your game though, is it?
Not if you have a question about acquiring a permit or what you need to do to get a permit. That's not really me. If you're asking about how does a permit affect your value, maybe that is. But if the person would like to clarify what the question is,
they're basically asking about the permitting process for improvements on their home.
Okay. So anybody that makes an improvement on your home needs to acquire a permit through your county office, building office, or your municipality that's issuing the permits.
Okay. So I haven't gotten any more questions, and I'm trying to think if there's anything I haven't asked yet about the reappraisal process. I will say there's a handy dandy book called the Citizen Reappraisal Guide that you can either download online or you can pick up at county offices that have pretty much all of the information we're saying and a lot more information about the history of them, what fair market value means, property tax key points, incorporated areas, and districting. So I highly recommend everyone checking that out.
Yeah, and Max, I'll point out too is that a version of that guide you have there, if you currently get a tax bill, the one that you will get in the mail here in the next few weeks for this year's property tax should have an insert in it like that guide. So when you get that, I'd encourage every citizen to look at that. If you come up with a question, then please email us or call us and let us know what that question is. We're here to answer your questions and happy to help.
One question that I did get that I forgot to mention was, is there a cap by which the value increases through a reappraisal?
No cap in the state of North Carolina. No.
Okay. And one just came in on Facebook. The road situation, does that affect the value of a house, whether or not roads needs fixing? It's on a dirt road.
Yeah, well, in appraisal, everything affects value, okay, where it's positive or negative. And the appraisers are trained, and that's part of the appraisal process, is to consider all influences, whatever it might be. So if that's dirt road or paved road or no road or whichever it may be, we do consider those to be an influence on value. And again, either positive or negative.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll get into the closing thoughts and closing announcements if there's anything else. Someone asked if there's a breakdown as to where the tax money is spent, but that's not you guys. That is another department. That's our finance office.
That's finance, but I think that is online, Max. If they want to look that up on the website, I think they can go to the budget and finance office and see that breakdown. It is
we have a lot of great dashboards for the community to use. Yep. Check them out. Yep. So you'll see a breakdown of everything there. Yep. So what I'll do is I'll just make a few announcements, and thank you so much, Keith and Jeff, for joining us today. We're ending a little bit early, but no need to go over if we don't need to.
That's great. Thank you, Max.
So aside from the reappraisal guide that I mentioned, I'm going to make a quick announcement about the tax collection office that is not the reappraisal office. They closed in March to significantly renovate their lobby area, and now they're open again, and they're able to process tax payments face-to-face for allowing more COVID-19 social distancing. So you can go to the tax office again, and if people want to visit the appraisals office, they pretty much go into the collections office. So,
yeah, if you come to pay your taxes face-to-face and you want to speak with an appraiser or anyone about your property value, then you can let the clerk know that, and they will get someone for you to speak to. We're happy to help you while you're here.
Okay. And the last one is, again, tune in. We're going to be doing this again on August 24th. So if you watch this one and you have questions that we didn't discuss, you can either submit them to realestate.questions. Is it questions or question?
Realestate.questions, I believe, Max.
Questions isn't a joke.
Realestate.questions@buncombecounty.org. Or you can just comment on this video on the social media sites, and we'll be sure to collect them.
Yes. Thank you.
So thank you for Keith and Jeff, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.